Imagine this, you're sitting at the same desk, using the same Java skills, working on the same project, but the person next to you is making 2, maybe even 3 times your salary. That's the reality for a lot of developers stuck in permanent jobs. They're capped at $70,000 or $80,000 a year, while contractors doing the exact same work are billing $600, $800, sometimes even $1,000 a day. That's $150K to $250K a year. So the question is, why are so many developers still trapped in jobs that keep them underpaid and overworked, when the opportunity to double their income is sitting right there in front of them? The answer is simple. They don't know that contracting is the fastest way to double your salary. They're either not aware of that, or they don't think it's real, or worse still, they just think it's not something they could ever be able to do. Well, you can do it. It is real. And today I'll give you a glimpse into how it worked out for me. Now, I'll start by saying that I've seen both sides of this world, right? Having worked in investment banking as a contractor for 25 years plus. By the way, if we haven't met before, my name is Matt Speak. I'm founder of Pro Java Contractor, where we teach people how to land high-paying roles in banks. But yeah, when I started out as a permanent developer, I did what everyone tells you to do. Climb the ladder, work hard, put the hours in, basically grind away diligently, and one day you'll get a promotion and more pay and things will magically work out for you. But in the meantime, just hang in there, keep doing that good work as diligently and to the best of your abilities you can, and just wait for your turn. That's the conventional wisdom, right? It's what we're told, and it's what our parents did. And so the logic is that this must be the right thing to do. And I believed for a long time that that was the right thing to do. You know, I remember celebrating tiny raises along the way, a few grand here and there over the years, nothing consistent though, and thinking, well, that's kind of progress, I guess. Not exactly what I was hoping for, but it'll do for now. And it didn't actually matter back then, right? Because at the time I didn't really have a family to provide for, so it was kind of more like cash on the hip for me, really. But no matter how hard I worked, no matter how many hours I seemed to put in, I just never seemed to get ahead. And deep down, I knew something was off. I knew something was wrong, because no matter how many late nights I put in, my paycheck just never seemed to move over the years. Barely seemed to increase. Then one day I was working for a project over at HSBC as a consultant for this new would-be startup consultancy firm who somehow had managed to get its foot in the door, where I became friends with someone who actually was a contractor. Now, I knew he was sharp, and technically he could have completely wiped the floor with me back then, but we used to go to lunch together and have a few beers at work from time to time. Anyway, he introduced me to this whole brand new world of contracting that I'd never even come across before. I kind of didn't get it at first, you know? I mean, the reason why he was banging on and, you know, trying to persuade me to go contracting, I think it was the angle he was using. He was, you know, more selling me the angle that you're your own boss, right? And that kind of side of things. And to be honest, when I was like in my 20s, the idea of being my boss didn't really appeal, because, I mean, I was getting paid in any case, so why would I want to kind of like change things and have this extra hassle of like being my own boss or what have you and starting up my own company? But after a few sessions of after work drinks over the weeks and everything, we become better friends. It showed me the difference in income he was making, and it was incredible, right? It was more tangible than telling me he was earning more. I mean, I could see it in everything. You know, where he lived, the laptop he used. He had a MacBook Pro, and this was before they were even affordable and had that mass appeal like they do today, and it was in a bank as well back, you know, about 15 years ago. But yeah, once I'd been exposed to that standard of living, how I'd seen it firsthand for myself and what it did for him, I was completely sold on the idea. So I asked him about the mechanics of it. I said, you know, how do you actually get into contracting, and how do you actually make this leap into that contracting world? Long story short, he enlightened me, recommended me an accountant I could use. Worst accountants I've ever had, by the way, but that's a story for a different day. But the TLDR is that they cost me a whole ton of money, so be careful with the accountants that you choose if you become a contractor. Anyway, I set up my own company, I made the leap into contracting, and honestly, I've never looked back since. And the difference, I have to say, and you won't believe this, but the difference was instantaneous, right? It's not an exaggeration to say that my income literally doubled overnight. As I was saying, I was working for this consultancy firm, trying to get its feet off the ground. In fact, I was employee number 1, as it happens, but I kind of got ripped off in that deal. But I was on about 45k in the UK, in London, which is about 60 grand in dollars in the US, when I went to my first contract at Lehman Brothers. Overnight, boom, I was pulling in £350 a day. Adjusting that for inflation, that's roughly about £750 per day in 2025 pounds sterling. In the UK, which is about just shy of $1,000 a day in the US. But man, what a feeling. I mean, really, the feeling of exhilaration that I felt when I signed that contract, my first ever contract back in July 2004, all those years ago, even thinking about it now, I was just, it's like I'd found a gap in the fence. It's like I'd found some kind of like, I don't know, I just felt, it was just an absolute rush. It was absolutely incredible, knowing that I was going to get £350 per day for pretty much doing the same thing that I was doing before. It was inconceivable to me. And when I signed the contract and the agreement was made, that's the purpose of a contract, to make an agreement between two parties, I knew at that point it's like things are going to change now. Things have definitely changed. This is like, kind of hit the big time, as it were. That's what I felt back then. Now, how did I get that first contract? Well, it's not because suddenly I became a better programmer. It's not because I learned some secret framework that no one else knew. It was the exact same skills I was using before. The only thing that changed was how I positioned myself in the market, to be honest. I mean, being able to double your income virtually in an instant, that's the piece that most developers never realize. They believe doubling their income, it has to take 5 or 10 years of climbing corporate ladders, waiting for someone to hand them a promotion, but the truth is, there is a shortcut, it does exist, and it's alive and kicking. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why contracting gives you that shortcut, and how it puts financial freedom, flexibility and predictability completely within your reach. Now, if this is starting to resonate with you and you don't want to spend the next 5 years waiting for promotions that never come, I've put together a free training that shows you exactly how to start your move into contracting. The link's below this video. Check it out afterwards because it's literally the roadmap that takes you from stuck employee to high earning contract, and it could literally be your first step to doubling your income like I did. So why should you consider moving to contracting? Well, let's start with the obvious reason developers switch, and that's money. When you double your pay, it's not just numbers on a paycheck though, it's real, tangible freedom. Think about what an extra $70,000 to $100,000 a year would mean for you. Maybe it's buying the house you've always wanted, instead of renting forever. Maybe it's finally being able to take your family on vacations without stressing out over credit card bills. Maybe it's paying off debt or building up investments that set you up for long-term financial success and stability. Whatever it might be for you, success looks different for different people, right? During my career, I've seen developers go from constantly worrying about bills to being able to breathe for the first time in years, all because contracting let them access day rates that the market, and this is the key thing here, was already willing to pay in any case. That's the key. You're not asking for charity here, right? You're just stepping into a system that already values contractors at double the rate of permanent employees, and that's a fact. I mean, true, you do have to position yourself in a certain way. You do have to know your stuff. Technically, you've got to be really strong technically. You've got to have those strong technical foundations. But the actual vehicle, if you like, of making good money, and I mean really good money, with software engineering is pretty easy to step into, to be honest, as long as you do it in the right way. And in just a second, I'll explain why that system works the way it does and why companies are happy to pay contractors more than they pay their own staff. Now let's talk about something permanent jobs almost never give you, and that's flexibility. So in a permanent role, right, your entire life is shaped by someone else's rules. You don't have the freedom that contractors get, you just don't. You need approval for time off, so you've got to beg your line manager. You're locked into the same office, one with the same manager, the same project, day in, day out. And if you're lucky, you get 2, maybe 3 weeks of vacation a year. When I moved into contracting, one of the first things I noticed, beyond the pay, was the freedom, right? I could take breaks between projects without asking anyone's permission. I could choose projects that excited me and say no to the ones that didn't. In fact, I had that flexibility then, and I've still got the same flexibility to this day. The flexibility though, it's not just about lifestyle, right? It goes deeper than that. It's about control. It's about the difference between being an employee who has to ask for permission and being a professional who gets to decide. And here's the thing, most developers assume that flexibility must mean instability. But in just a moment, I'll show you why contracting actually gives you more stability and predictability than staying permanent. Let's be honest, the big reason many developers stay permanent is the story we've been sold about security. Permanent jobs are supposed to be safe and predictable. But how predictable is waiting 5 years for a promotion that might never come up? How secure is a role where your entire department can be canned, outsourced or restructured overnight? In reality, right, permanent jobs, they give you the illusion of stability. Contracting, on the other hand, gives you real clarity. You know from day one what your rate is, $600, $800, $1,000 a day, whatever it might be. You don't have to beg for a raise every year. it's this begging that I don't like, right? It's just a really undignified position to be in life. Beg for time off, right? Or beg for a pay raise. You know, that it's just really not a good position to be in. One other thing as well, by the way, which is much better since being a contractor, you don't have to worry about office politics either. You just don't have to get drowned constantly in playing the game, having your face seen by the higher ups, having to have your work noticed and the recognition you deserve, always eating away at you. Being a permanent employee, to be honest, was just so demotivating a lot of the time for reasons exactly like these. Anyway, let's keep it light. I don't want to go into too much of a rant, but listen, suffice to say that the demand for skilled Java contractors in banking is so high that once you know how to position yourself, you can line up projects back to back or take a break when you want to. And that's the true predictability you've got, knowing exactly what you're worth, exactly what you learn, and exactly how to stay in demand. So while developers are clinging on to permanent jobs for safety, the reality is that contractors often have more control, clarity, and yes, more stability than their permanent counterparts. So if contracting is the fastest way to double your salary, the real question is, how do you actually make that leap? Because the idea is exciting, right? But the path can feel unclear, I'm guessing. That's exactly what I'll cover in the next video, the 4 steps to go from employee to banking contractor. Once you see those steps laid out, you'll realize this isn't some fantasy or a maybe one day I'll do this kind of goal. It's a clear, repeatable path that developers just like you are already following. And if you're serious about doubling your income and building freedom into your career, you don't want to miss it. I've linked that video for you right here. If it's not there yet, no worries, it'll be uploaded in the next few days. So go check that out. In the meantime, subscribe now, switch on the notifications so you're the first to know when it drops, because in that next session, we're going to cover these 4 master steps to becoming a Java contractor. And this is the piece that ties everything together. It really does, especially if you're feeling the pinch now financially and you want to get ahead quickly. Go ahead, click that video now, and I'll see you there.